Incredible tale, kind woman saves millionaire from storm, but shocking truth exposed the next day. The wind howled like a banshee outside the diner, shaking the windows as Sarah poured coffee for a couple of regulars. She managed to balance the demands of the restaurant and keep a watchful eye on her young son, Jake, who sat coloring at a booth. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter back home, leering at her like a pack of wolves circling their prey. With every hour spent serving customers, her dreams of a better life felt increasingly distant. And yet, every day she trudged through, driven by the love she felt for Jake. Her heart raced when she noticed the gusts of rain intensifying, as if the heavens were angry. Glancing out the window, she saw shadows of chaos moving on the street. A gnawing instinct told her something was amiss. Suddenly, a loud crash jolted her from her thoughts, followed by a deafening silence. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. Then, an urgent cry for help pierced through the storms. The voice was panicked, desperate. Without thinking, Sarah slipped out the door into the torrent. The air was thick with a biting chill as raindrops stung her skin. Rushing towards the sound, she spotted a disheveled man trapped in an overturned car. Adrenaline surged through her veins, and with a quick glance back at Jake's booth, she knew she couldn't stand still. "Hold on!" she shouted, wrenching the door open with a force that surprised her. Moments later, she found herself pulling him free just as the storm's fury intensified. The man, Tom, was a stark contrast to her life, expensive clothes drenched and crisply tailored, an aura of privilege dripping from him. But as he looked at her, eyes filled with gratitude, she felt a flicker of pride. "Thank you," he gasped, coughing a little. "I thought I was going to." "Don't mention it." "You'll be okay now," she interrupted, shaking off the weight of the encounter. Fear and relief danced on the edges of her emotions, but her mind quickly shifted back to her struggles. Heroism felt foreign. She was no one special, just a mother surviving day by day. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the storm began to die down, Tom insisted on rewarding her bravery, but Sarah couldn't accept. She recoiled at the thought of charity. Dignity and hard work were her foundation. She didn't need handouts. Yet, the longer she spent with him, the harder it became to ignore the complexities of their lives intersecting. When Tom extended an invitation to meet again, she hesitated. Guilt and ambition warred within her, the ambition of a mother wanting better for her child and the guilt of connecting with someone whose life was defined by excess. But in the weeks that followed, their friendship deepened, filled with shared laughter and late-night conversations about hopes and dreams. That spark of hope began to illuminate her dreary life until it flickered when dark realities started surfacing. A friendly dinner invitation turned into a confrontation with the toxic roots of Tom's fortune. Corporate exploitation gnawed at her conscience. Her community felt the repercussions of his actions, and she could feel the weight of their suffering mixing with her growing affection for him. With the storm of her emotions echoing in her mind, Sarah stood poised at a precipice. Torn between exposing the truth or preserving her vision for a brighter future, she faced a moment of maximum anguish. The roar of the fading storm outside mirrored the chaos within her, compelling her to confront Tom, and the reality that her next choice could forever change her life and the lives of those she cared for most. What would she do when everything hung in the balance? The next day dawned with a hesitant light filtering through the clouds, as if the world itself was holding its breath in the aftermath of the storm. Sarah woke early, her mind racing with thoughts of Tom and the moral chasm that had opened between them. Every laugh they shared and confession they made felt stained by the creeping unease of his wealth that came at the cost of others' dignity. It wasn't just about her anymore, it was about the community she cherished. As she prepared breakfast for Jake, the rhythmic clattering of pots and pans drowned out the cacophony of her thoughts, but only temporarily. Each splash of the spatula against the skillet seemed to summon the memory of the dark conversations they had. Tom had spoken with passion about turning his family's empire into something sustainable, yet Sarah couldn't ignore the faces of those affected by his business practices, families who had struggled against the very system he represented. While Jake ate, she turned her focus toward her personal circumstances. The bills on the counter taunted her, the sound of their crinkling overpowering the wisdom she shared with Tom. Could she dismiss his involvement in their suffering simply because their connection felt real? Pushing down her discomfort, she resolved to confront the situation head-on rather than allowing it to fester in her gut. The diner buzzed with the chatter of customers later that day, providing Sarah a welcome distraction. But even amidst the coffee and clinking dishes, her mind echoed with memories of Tom's smile, which deepened when he spoke about changing his family's legacy. What a naive thought, she had mused, but perhaps there was something to it, something innately human to want better, to dream of making a difference. Just as she was sinking deeper into contemplation, the bell above the door chimed, signaling Tom's arrival. His presence drew attention, evident in how the room seemed to shift around him. He approached her with a stride that spoke to his confidence, an undeniable charm wrapped in his tailored suit. Yet today, Sarah felt a wall rising within herself. "Hey," he greeted, a familiar warmth in his voice. "You're even prettier than the sunrise." She forced a smile, suppressing the butterflies swirling in her stomach. "Let us skip the pleasantries. We need to talk." Tom chuckled lightly, but concern flickered across his features. "All right, shoot. What's on your mind?" After a brief pause, Sarah launched in no more stalling. "You remember what we talked about regarding your company? The impact it has on families like mine, and the people in our town?" His expression morphed from curiosity into guarded defensiveness. "Of course. I told you I'm looking to implement changes. Words don't change lives, Tom," she interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "You can't just talk about being different. You need to be different." Taking a step back, Tom opened his mouth to respond, hesitating as Sarah's words hung between them like a charged wire. She could see the struggle behind his eyes, caught between the person he was and the person he wanted to be. She held her breath. She had to make him see, to challenge his perception of the world outside his privileged existence. The diner's sounds faded to a hush, the atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. What would it take for him to grasp the breadth of his responsibility? She was no longer just a mother fighting for her child, she was a woman standing firm in the face of injustice. Before Tom could respond, the bell chimed again, this time announcing a new arrival, a familiar figure from her past. The sight sent a pang through her, awakening ghosts she thought had been laid to rest. She felt the combined pressures of her unresolved feelings while balancing the future she began to envision with Tom. What lay in store for her now as she stood at this unexpected and daunting crossroads? Would their connection weather the storm of reality, or would it crumble under the weight of unspeakable truths? The moment Sarah directed her gaze towards the entrance, her heart sank. It was David, the man who had once represented everything she thought love could be, standing there with an air of confidence that felt jarring against the backdrop of her own internal strife. Memories poured in, their laughter shared over coffee, the midnight drives filled with dreams long since faded. Yet those were not the thoughts she wanted to entertain at that moment. As he moved closer, his eyes caught the flicker of surprise mingled with apprehension within her. Had he come back to stir the pot, or did he genuinely wish to reconnect? She wasn't sure which would be more painful to confront. One glance back at Tom conveyed volumes. His posture had stiffened, a mix of jealousy and confusion clouding his features. This was no longer a simple discussion. "Sarah," David said, his voice smooth but laced with a hint of uncertainty, "I didn't expect to see you here. I've been thinking about you." His words dripped with nostalgia, but she felt the heavy weight of reality pressing in. "David," she replied, forcing her tone to remain steady, "it's been a while." She darted her eyes back to Tom, and that wall she had tried to erect wavered momentarily. Did he sense her turmoil? Can we talk? David continued, ignoring Tom entirely. The invitation felt like a lifeline tossed into tumultuous waters, one that could either save her or drag her under. No, we can't, she sharply replied, shocking even herself with the fierce finality in her voice. The words hung in the air like an unspoken promise, immediate and fragile. She had spent too long rebuilding herself from the wreckage of their last encounter, holding fast to the choices she had made for her and Jake. Tom stepped closer, folding his arms in a protective manner, catching her eye as if to silently ask if she wanted him there. What would that even mean? To get caught in a whirlwind of old feelings while grappling with the present? No, she wouldn't allow it. Why not? David pressed, an edge creeping into his voice. To bury the past like it never happened? Her resolve hardened, thoughts racing. She felt the weight of her decisions weighing against a yearning she had refused to acknowledge. This fierce independence she had forged over years was now under scrutiny, not only by Tom but by David's presence as well. The past was a siren song, tempting but ultimately devastating. I have moved on, David, she stated, her voice firmer than before. I'm trying to build a better life for my son, one that doesn't include the chaos you brought. The silence that followed was deafening. Tom's expression shifted subtly. He was seeing the armor she had built around herself, recognizing the truth of her struggle, yet the glimmer of hope for understanding flickered in his gaze. As she returned her focus to Tom, she quietly assessed the uncharted territory between them. Could he become the ally she needed? Someone who could help not just in private but in the public eye, where his family's wealth could be used responsibly rather than to perpetuate harm? Sarah, he finally murmured, breaking her thoughts. I'm committed to making a real change, for you, for the people your heart cares for. Let us not let this moment derail what I know we can accomplish together. The air in the diner crackled with the tension of decisions waiting to be made. Could she truly allow herself to believe in him and this potential? But more importantly, could she harness this desire for change to create a better future for herself and Jake? As David's frustrated figure loomed behind her, and Tom stepped closer, she faced an unforeseen choice. Would she risk opening up to a new partnership that could redefine her journey, or would she retreat into the safety of the familiar, albeit flawed, past? The question lingered, heavy with possibility and fraught with fear. Sarah took a deep breath, ready to chart a new course. But just as she prepared to speak, the diner door swung open once more, heralding unexpected guests that would plunge her deeper into the heart of conflict. The diner door swung wide, revealing a group of well-dressed individuals, laughter and boisterous chatter spilling across the threshold. Sarah's heart quickened not from the allure of their unexpected entrance, but from the realization that her moment of decision was now drowned in the noise of new possibilities and challenges. She felt the world spin slightly off-center as they entered, bringing with them an aura of privilege and entitlement that contrasted starkly with the weight of her own plight. Among them, one figure stood out, a tall man with striking features who commanded attention simply by the way he carried himself. Wasn't he the Darnell Corporation's CEO? The very firm responsible for the local community's recent upheaval? The realization sent ripples of anxiety through her. Just how deep was Tom's involvement with them? Tom's hand found her back, giving her a gentle reassuring push, his silent invitation to remain present. She took a shaky breath, pushing aside the tumult within as she focused on Tom's unwavering gaze, confident yet questioning. Do you want me to go? He asked quietly, his proximity enforcing an air of intimacy the kind she had missed since her last true connection had faded into memory. No, she replied, fighting against the urge to retreat. I want to stay, she added, summoning the fire that had clawed its way to the surface during her painful reawakening with David. As the new arrivals settled into a booth, their laughter erupted like fireworks, contrasting sharply with the unresolved tension left hanging in the air. Sarah felt herself teetering on the brink of two diverging pathways. On one hand loomed the chaos of her past, embodied by David, still standing like a shadow behind her. On the other was Tom, promising collaboration and progress in a world she once believed was forever closed off to her. Sarah. David's voice sliced through her thoughts, sharper than before. Don't let them distract you. Remember our dreams. His desperation ignited indignation within her. She turned slightly, eyes narrowing as she fixed him with a steady gaze. David, our dreams were built on a foundation of illusions and chaos. I'm no longer who I was then, she spat, emotions surging like a rising tide. It dawned on her that she wasn't merely shielding herself from memories of love lost but protecting a newfound identity. She was a mother, a survivor vulnerable yet fiercely resilient. As the laughter from the newly arrived guests cascaded around them, she caught snippets of their conversation, a discussion on community investments and ethical rebuilding plans. The word struck her like a jolt of electricity. Did that mean Tom had real power to create change? Could she leverage their developing partnership for something greater than just personal growth? Let us go to them, Sarah stated, her voice firm as she turned to Tom, feeling the adrenaline course through her. This burgeoning alliance could defy the tumultuous cycle she had danced around for far too long. Are you sure? Tom hesitated, gauging her determination. Yes, she affirmed, a spark igniting as she imagined transforming her voice into one that rallied others. If they can hear us in that moment, she understood her purpose. It was time to confront the architects of her home's disarray, wielding not just her story but the unity she could build with someone like Tom. As they approached the guests, her heart raced with a mix of determination and trepidation. A sudden revelation then washed over her. This moment was not just about confronting her past or seizing a future with Tom, it was a decisive intervention, a way to claim back her narrative. But just as they reached the edge of the group, the conflict inside her quieted, replaced with a growing urgency. Would she find the strength to voice her concerns, risking both vulnerability and potential rejection? The question hung heavily as she prepared to step into uncharted territory, just as another unanticipated figure emerged from the back, an unsettling reminder of her past, the one she thought she had left behind. Would this new confrontation derail her mission, or could it be the impetus for her ultimate growth? Tom's face mirrored her own apprehension as they approached the group, his confidence faltering slightly under the weight of Sarah's turmoil. The laughter faded slightly as their presence began to draw attention. Sarah felt the collective gaze sweep over her, a mix of intrigue and judgment, an unwelcome reminder of her insecurities. As she stood on the precipice of this new challenge, Sarah's mind raced. The figure who had emerged from the back, a striking woman dressed impeccably in a designer suit, was none other than Margaret Darnell, Tom's business partner and a well-respected name in the community. She exuded authority and charisma, making Sarah's pulse quicken, not just from anxiety but from the fierce resolve she was beginning to cultivate. This was not merely a social encounter, it was a battlefield where she could stake her claim. "What brings you two over here?" Margaret asked, her voice coated in honey but her eyes sharp, evaluating them methodically. Tom hesitated, almost waiting for Sarah to speak first. This was her moment. The spotlight had shifted, and she needed to seize this opportunity to redefine her narrative. "We'd like to discuss the Darnell Corporation's plans for community investment," Sarah said, surprised at the steadiness of her voice. Her words echoed in the stunned silence, drawing the attention of the others from across the booth. Their expressions shifted from amusement to interest, the atmosphere thickening with anticipation. Would they take her seriously? Margaret smiled, but there was a challenge lurking behind it. Community investment? That's quite ambitious. What are your thoughts? For a breath, Sarah felt the weight of the past pressing down, but she pulled on her new identity, the mother willing to fight for her children's future, the survivor determined to break free from the chains of expectation. "I believe that true investment means engaging with those who are affected not just financially, but socially and emotionally. The community deserves a voice in its own destiny," she asserted, her conviction growing with each syllable. David shifted uncomfortably behind her, his disapproval coloring the air around them. They had spent years entrenched in a vision driven by personal ambition and survival. Now, she was voicing the unease that had festered quietly within her. But she could feel Tom's silent support, an anchor amid the turbulent emotional storm. Margaret raised an eyebrow, impressed yet skeptical. Interesting perspective, Sarah. You seem to understand the complexities behind these decisions. What would you suggest should be done? The question hung in the air, heavy with possibility and peril. Sarah's mind churned through the ideas she had nurtured over the past weeks. Prioritizing transparency in the development plans is key. Holding regular forums that allow community members to voice their concerns and ideas can foster trust, she stated, a newfound fire igniting her passion. Trust? David interjected sharply, his voice cutting through the budding conversation. Trust is earned, not demanded. What do you know about business practices? About the sacrifices needed? You're naive to think that everyone will just cooperate. At his words, a flush of anger coursed through Sarah. Beneath the surface, a different strength emerged, a resilience born from rising above her past. It may be naive, she replied coolly, fixing him with a fierce glare, but true change requires vulnerability and a willingness to listen, even when it's uncomfortable. I refuse to reward the same cycle of silence and powerlessness. Gasps rippled through the group, intrigue mingling with disbelief. The atmosphere transformed once again, and Sarah struck a chord she hadn't anticipated. Could this be the start of her metamorphosis from merely a participant in her story to a creator of her narrative? Margaret studied her closely, a spark of curiosity in her eyes. Well, Sarah, it seems you have more potential than I initially realized. Would you be interested in a more formal discussion to explore these ideas further? The realization chilled Sarah and exhilarated her all at once. This was her gateway, a chance to ally with someone who possessed the power to influence change. But as the implications of her bold stance began to settle in her mind, she wondered, was she prepared for the sacrifices this partnership would wait? Just as this revelation washed over her, the door to the diner swung open again, and in stepped another unexpected figure from her past who demanded her attention and perhaps the battle she thought she had left behind. Would she confront this specter now, or would she plunge into the unknown with Tom and Margaret, risking everything to finally take control of her own destiny? A wave of tension washed over Sarah as the door's bell jingled, signaling the arrival of an unwelcome figure who disrupted her fragile momentum. The atmosphere thickened, and she felt each heartbeat echoing in her ears. The world around her blurred momentarily, narrowing to focus on the silhouette stepping into the diner. She recognized him instantly, Josh, an old friend turned adversary, with a smirk that had once ignited sparks of camaraderie but now signaled a potential storm. His arrival felt like a stark reminder of every doubt she had wrestled with since rekindling her ambition. She had convinced herself that her past was behind her, that she could forge her own path unencumbered by old ties and grudges. But now, the past clawed back into the present, challenging her resolve. Would she let it derail her just when she began to carve a new identity? Sarah. It's been a while, Josh called out, his voice smooth yet laced with a condescension that sent a shiver down her spine. He ambled toward her, exuding an air of confidence that intensified the air of scrutiny she felt from Margaret and the others. I didn't expect to find you here, trying your hand at the corporate game. Isn't that a little out of your comfort zone? His words struck like arrows, aimed perfectly at her vulnerabilities. But instead of shrinking back, Sarah stood her ground, her earlier ferocity bubbling to the surface once more. I'm exactly where I want to be, Josh, she replied, her voice a blend of defiance and determination. And I've learned that the only way to grow is to step out of my comfort zone. He chuckled, a mockery lingering in his laughter. It's cute that you think you can change things. You always were an idealist. But the real world, well, it has a way of bringing those dreams crashing down. With each word, he tested the foundations she had begun to build, threatening to erode her newfound resolve. Did he truly believe the world was void of possibility? That it had to be an arm's length game of power and control? As she absorbed the challenge, an unfamiliar clarity surged within her. She might have faced setbacks before, but today was not yesterday. Maybe you're right, she said, her response measured yet sharp. But I refuse to believe that change is futile. What I care about is creating pathways for discussion, for innovation that doesn't lie solely in profit margins but in human connection. Margaret's observation shifted slightly, a hint of respect edging into her expression. Perhaps Sarah's boldness struck a chord even beyond herself. She could see all eyes in the diner dividing between curiosity at her resilience and the lingering skepticism in Josh's voice. This was her moment to draw her line in the sand. Could she genuinely navigate this complex landscape, balancing personal ambition with a desire for impact? Just as she felt a flicker of conviction lighting her path, Tom placed a hand on her arm, offering silent support that grounded her. The grounding sensation reunited her focus. She zeroed in on the current battle with Josh, ready to claim her space. "What will it take for you to believe in the strength of change?" she asked, turning back to Josh. It was a question that hung heavy in the air, pushing him into a corner. A smirk once again danced on his lips, but this time there was hesitation. "I'll believe it when I see it, Sarah. Prove it to me. Show me these ideas of yours can withstand scrutiny." Her heart raced. The challenge ignited more than just fear, it transformed into determination. She realized that this wasn't just about confronting Josh, it was about seizing the autonomy she had so desperately sought. The thrill of the impending battle beckoned her to take the reins of her narrative, to stand resolutely as the author of her own story. As she prepared to respond, Margaret leaned closer, intrigued and expectant. The stakes had escalated, and Sarah knew it was time to fight for what she believed in, to bridge the gap between ambition and action. Yet even as she gathered her thoughts, she sensed the disquiet that reverberated from behind. Facing both a doubting audience and a ghost from her past, could she transform her vision into reality? The pressure mounted, and Sarah braced for the confrontation that loomed ahead, one that would decide not only her future but the impact she could have on those around her. Would she emerge victorious, wielding her voice as an instrument of change, or would the storm of her past wash her ambition away? The intensity of the moment electrified the air, setting the stage for an encounter that would ultimately define her. As the group looked on, the question remained, was she prepared to rise or would she falter when it mattered most? Sarah took a deep breath, steadied herself, and felt the weight of the diner's gaze on her. The doubts she grappled with began to fade, replaced with a fierce resolve that she could redefine her narrative, starting right now. "Prove it to you," she retorted, her tone unwavering. "Proving something is not merely about facts and figures, Josh. It's about showing that progress is possible, not just in a corporate setting, but in how we choose to relate to one another." Her eyes locked onto his. "Are you really so narrow-minded that you can't see beyond your own skepticism?" Josh leaned back, momentarily taken aback by her directness. The anger in her veins buzzed like electricity, and for that instant, she realized she was not just battling him, she was battling the very memories of herself that had once accepted defeat. Margaret remained observant, her brows furrowing in contemplation, as if contemplating a possibility she hadn't dared to entertain before. Sarah seized the moment, pushing forward. "I believe true growth comes from collaboration, creativity, and understanding. I want to create bridges, not barriers. When have you ever seen innovation born from a place of negativity? That's all well and good, but the real world doesn't run on idealistic notions." Josh snapped back, his bravado faltering for the first time. "What if it could?" she challenged, emboldened. "What if we invited diverse perspectives into our discussions instead of dismissing them? Isn't that where true innovation lies? I can't control how people respond to my ideas, but I can control whether I share them or hide away because I fear criticism." As the words spilled out, Sarah felt the inertia of past failures tethering her ease. Yet she also felt something unexpected rising, a glimmer of hope infused with determination. It was time to step into the light, a light she had long shied away from, engendering vulnerability and strength all at once. Her heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead. This was not merely about Josh anymore, it was about proving something to herself. She was capable of standing firm, of being bold, of speaking truth to the shadows of her past. "I will show you," she concluded, lowering her voice to make her point land. "But it won't be by fending off your attacks. It will be through the work I put in, the connections I build, and the vision I lay out for others to follow. I won't be defined by your cynicism, Josh." Around her, the diner buzzed with the murmurs of newfound interest, the energy shifting. Sarah noticed Tom's encouraging nod, a reassuring anchor in the turbulent sea of self-doubt. The smell of coffee mingled with the anticipation hanging in the air, fueling her desire to transform her next steps into concrete actions that bore meaning, but even as she felt the thrill of empowerment, the uncertainty nagged at the edge of her excitement. If she were to pursue this path of authenticity, what would she have to sacrifice? Josh's smirk faded. This time, she had struck a chord of unease within him. "You believe you can create this change as if it's some easy undertaking, as if the world will just get on board." "I believe it starts with me," she shot back earnestly. "I'm willing to take on that challenge." "Are you?" For the first time, she could sense that her conviction shook him. But with a quick recovery, he laughed again, but it was devoid of confidence. "So be it. Just know it won't be easy. You'll need to bring your A-game, and I'll be watching." "Then watch closely," Sarah articulated, her voice steady, punctuating her resolve. "Because I intend to succeed." As the conversation melded into silence, the challenge hung in the air, heavy yet exhilarating. The scrutiny she faced would become her fuel, and she envisioned each doubt as a brick that would build her fortress of change, yet as she prepared to pivot the conversation toward specifics, she felt a rush of unease creep in. What if her ideas did fail? What if she stepped into this new identity only to crumble under the pressure? The tension was palpable, as if the entire diner held its breath, eager for her next move. The light had shifted, but would she overwrite her past shadows or find herself ensnared in them once more? Sweeping possibilities coiled around her like tendrils of smoke, blurring the line between promise and peril. With all eyes on her, the stakes could scarcely be higher. The moment of truth beckoned, declaring loud and clear, would Sarah rise to meet the call of her ambitions, or would the storm within her cast it all away? The weight of the moment lingered as Sarah attempted to shift the conversation back toward her ideas. She needed to find traction, yet her mind churned with a whirlwind of possibilities, each one accompanied by a whisper of doubt. Did she truly have the capacity to lead with the traits she had just professed? "Let's talk specifics," she said, channeling her inner strength. The diner's atmosphere crackled with anticipation, the smell of freshly brewed coffee sharpening her senses. "I envision a project that brings people together, leveraging our different strengths. What if we organized brainstorming sessions where everyone felt safe to share their ideas? Not just box-checking meetings, but real dialogue." Josh's expression morphed from skepticism to something more contemplative. It sparked a flicker of reassurance within her. "And who exactly are we in this scenario?" he shot back, an eyebrow raised as if daring her to provide clarity. "We would be a team, anyone who's willing to contribute," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "It's not just about leadership. It's about participation and mutual respect. When we elevate the voices of others, we not only innovate but strengthen the entire framework of our work. It's no longer just a hierarchy, it's a community driven by shared purpose." Josh's smirk re-emerged, but now it felt different, tinged with curiosity rather than outright dismissal. Leaning in, he asked, "And what if they're not ready to play that game? What if they shut down your ideas?" In that instant, Sarah revisited her own uncertainties. But instead of retreating, she recognized this as a pivotal moment. "You're right. They may fear vulnerability, just as I have. But that's the challenge I'm willing to take on. I would actively work to create a safe space. We would cultivate trust, leading to expansive creativity." Her confidence surged, punctuated by the intensity of the glances exchanged across the diner. The air thickened with collective hope mixed with skepticism, and she knew she had to capitalize on this energy. "What if I fail?" she thought to herself. What if, after all this, no one responds? What if it's just a facade, and I'm left standing alone? These fears clawed at her resolve, momentarily dimming her light. Yet, a counter-thought emerged: what if I succeed? What if this is the spark that ignites true change? I can't control how people react, but I can pave the way, she declared, feeling each word resonate deeper within her. The goal is to illuminate the path forward, not to carry the burden alone. The notion of failure needs redefinition, we all learn through experience. A moment of silence followed her determined declaration. She sensed the impact her words had, not just on Josh, but on others who sat listening. The flicker of recognition in Margaret's eyes ignited another layer of courage within Sarah. So, what's the plan? Josh leaned back, a calculative spark now evident. How do we ignite this vision? Sarah took a careful breath, newly resolved to build upon her earlier boldness. We can start small. A workshop, a roundtable where everyone shares what drives them. From that experience, we'll examine the synergies that arise. Building from the ground up is what will allow us to mend the rifts between us. As she spoke, Sarah found herself painting a vivid picture of what could be, her inner turmoil transforming into a shared vision that coursed through the diner like a gust of fresh air. Could she truly navigate through such unease while simultaneously rising to the challenge of leading others? Then let's put it to a vote, Josh proposed, catching her off guard. If you can convince this room, I'll back your initiative. The weight of those words landed heavily on her shoulders. It was not merely a test of her ideas, it was a testament to her ability to rally support, to thrive amidst scrutiny, and to validate her voice against the hum of doubt. Determined eyes shifted toward her, the stakes now rising with the pressure. Okay, she said, feeling the unmistakable pulse of urgency in her veins. She could either walk away from the challenge or embrace it fully. Let's do this. As the diner buzzed with hesitant excitement, Sarah felt the reality of a fresh confrontation ahead. But was she truly ready to confront the specters of her own insecurities in front of an audience that was deliberating her vision? The moment loomed large, filled with potential and peril, and she had to summon every ounce of her will. Just as she prepared to propose the vote, a sudden commotion drew her attention to the entrance. A stranger burst through the door, belonging to a world completely detached from her current battle. He had an air of urgency about him, as if he were carrying news that could disrupt everything Sarah had worked to foster. A new challenge was about to unfold, and suddenly, the diner felt like a setting poised on the brink of tumultuous change. Sarah's heart raced with exhilaration and dread. How would this revelation shape the narrative she had just begun to assert? As Sarah's pulse quickened, she took a moment to absorb the stranger's presence. Drenched from the rain and radiating an urgency that matched her own internal turmoil, he surveyed the crowded diner before locking eyes with her. It was as if he knew she was on the brink of something monumental. What's happening? A nearby voice broke her trance. It was Margaret, her brow furrowed in concern. The room shifted its focus, anticipation crackling more fiercely than before. Everyone was waiting, wondering if the stranger would disrupt or contribute. As much as Sarah wanted to dismiss the stranger, something about his urgency tugged at her instincts. The man was panting, each breath strained. I'm looking for help. There's a situation across town, an urgent matter, he said. His eyes darted around the room, settling again on Sarah, as if he felt her emerging leadership challenge might somehow intertwine with the chaos he described. Do you have time? He pressed, gauging her reaction. It could affect everyone here. The insinuation of collective urgency hung heavily in the air, knotting her stomach. In an instant, Sarah's aspirations for a vote, the workshop, the opportunity to lay the groundwork for meaningful dialogue all threatened to unravel. The very notion of her leading this initiative was tenuous. Within the confines of the diner, she had felt empowered by shared aspirations. How could she now segue into this unknown? Can't it wait a bit? Josh spoke, his tone sharpening like a blade, ready to slice through the unfolding tension. The stranger shook his head vehemently. No, it can't. We need as many voices as possible. Sarah found herself at a crossroads, her mind racing with the implications. This could either be an interruption or the very catalyst her initial vision needed. The urgency echoed her own fears of being unheard, of having her voice swallowed by the chaos. This was not dissimilar to the environment she hoped to cultivate. This stranger could represent a pathway to affirm that vision amidst upheaval. "All right," she said, heart thundering in her chest. The demeanor of the diner shifted from skeptical to engaged, their attention now fully absorbed by her words. "Let us hear what you have to say. What's the situation?" The stranger inhaled deeply, as though her acceptance bore immense weight. "There's a storm brewing that could bring down more than just rain. Local businesses are at risk, and organizations need volunteers to mitigate the damage before it's too late." Sarah felt a swell of conflicting thoughts. On one hand, this seemed like the challenge pushing against the very structure she had begun to envision. On the other hand, could her aspiration thrive amidst this kind of chaos? "How can we help?" she asked, her voice steadying, a newfound resolve intertwining her fate with those around her. "We need a command center, a place where everyone can come together to make swift decisions and organize volunteers." "That's why I came here," he replied earnestly. The diner's collective breath hung in suspense. Sarah assessed the gathering. The very individuals she had hoped to inspire were now looking to her for guidance. They wanted the connection and participation she'd advocated for, but the stakes had escalated dramatically. Feeling the weight of their gazes, she recognized the moment for transformation. This was not simply about her vision of a workshop, it was a living scenario where the bonds she sought to build could start here and now, amid crisis. She scanned the crowd, she could see others agreeing, nodding. The pressure was high, but the resolve began to solidify within her. Perhaps this challenge was precisely what she needed to reveal the strength of her leadership together, as a community. "We'll do it," she declared, her voice rising over the murmurs. "We will organize ourselves and create that command center." As the diner erupted in agreement, Sarah felt a shift within. She was not just advocating for an idea anymore. She was executing an immediate response that dynamic leadership demanded. Yet, the back of her mind echoed with a new awareness: leadership would require more than just planning, it would demand fortitude, empathy, and the ability to listen. Could she navigate this evolving reality where vulnerabilities were exposed under the pressure of urgency? With her thoughts swirling and adrenaline surging, Sarah prepared to step into the unknown. The time had come to face not only the looming storm but the very essence of her purpose. As she strategized her next steps, she could sense the storm brewing not just outside, but within herself, as her vulnerabilities rose to the surface. What would they uncover as they trudged toward this new challenge, and how would it change the dynamics of their collaboration forever? The days that followed that chaotic afternoon in the diner became a crucible for Sarah. Each morning, as the sun peeked through the clouds, she cemented her role as a leader, channeling the urgency of the moment into tangible actions. Her initiative gathered momentum, volunteers flocked to the command center she established, driven by her passion and resolute determination. Sarah took pride in witnessing the community banding together, their efforts stemming from a wellspring of shared resilience. No longer confined to the diner's booths, Sarah's vision transformed into reality, but she was acutely aware that with visibility came scrutiny. Yet, with Tom at her side, she felt an underlying strength that persisted amidst the noise. He had become an ally, advocating for the ethical restructuring of his family's corporation, a shift that sought to align profits with social responsibility. Sarah recognized that their partnership transcended personal connections. It had morphed into a collaboration rooted in shared values and potential for change. As Sarah faced the myriad challenges of coordinating community efforts, she discovered newfound confidence, transforming her initial fears into stepping stones of progress. She adeptly orchestrated strategies, drawing upon the strengths of each volunteer, and managed to foster an environment where ideas flourished, discussions flowed, and quiet voices found resolution. Underneath the camaraderie, she felt an unexpected weight. The lingering shadows of doubts from the past resurfaced. Josh's words echoed ominously in her mind, questioning her capabilities and intentions. But every time she felt the urge to succumb to insecurity, she would return to the faces of her neighbors, their hope illuminating the path ahead. Each smile of gratitude and each shared story reinforced her purpose. She was building something valuable and necessary. Her breakthrough came unexpectedly when news spread that the very task force she spearheaded showed signs of progress. The town council acknowledged her efforts, instituting dialogues with local businesses. Recognizing Sarah's ability to galvanize the community, they invited her to present at an upcoming session, a platform strikingly different from the diner's booth where she once found herself entrenched in old conflicts. Standing before the council, she delivered a stirring testimony about collaboration and innovation woven with both her personal experiences and the insights gained from the community's united efforts. Her articulation resonated deeply, leading to a unanimous resolution supporting local businesses and establishing a fund for community growth initiatives. As she stepped down, the applause resonated like thunder, drowning out the ghosts of moments when she feared voicing her dreams. She felt validated, the ambitions that had once seemed lofty now manifesting in the support around her. The satisfaction rippling through her was more than triumph, it was a sense of rebirth, a reaffirmation of her potential, a woman who has transformed adversity into opportunity. In the weeks that followed, Sarah experienced a series of professional acknowledgments. Tom's commitment to ethical practices garnered attention, revealing how her influence had not only transformed her own life but also sparked a shift in perspectives within his corporation. Their collaborative changes paved the way for sustainable initiatives that rippled throughout the industry, garnering recognition in local publications. She received invitations to join advisory boards, engage in dialogues about responsible corporate practices, and share her expertise at community and business forums. It was a reflection of her growth. Something tangible was emerging from the chaos, illustrating that her voice mattered in a world often dictated by louder, more powerful entities. Sarah had conquered her insecurities and emerged as a figure of competence and inspiration. Standing among leaders and decision-makers, she radiated solid confidence, secure in the knowledge that she had harnessed her experiences into agents of transformation. Each opportunity wasn't just recognition, it was a testament to her ability to forge alliances, summon tenacity, and inspire collective action. At the forefront of change, Sarah had achieved a standing that once seemed unreachable, empowered by the understanding that true leadership stems from vulnerability intertwined with resilience, capable of creating bridges of connection that can weather any storm. As she gazed out at the community she loved, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment wash over her. This was not where her journey ended, it was merely the beginning. And as the new dawn broke, illuminating the next chapter, Sarah stood poised to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that she had already conquered the fiercest one, her own self-doubt. Now is the moment for you to step into your own journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories, leave a like now to feed the algorithm and make your voice count, comment your reactions and theories about the ending, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to take action. True fans of personal overcoming stories must support this channel.